All right, good day, everybody. This is E. Marcel, producer of Sports Inquirer, and thank you for joining us for another edition of the Gridiron Blitz. We're going to preview this upcoming NFL season, our award winners, division winners, Super Bowl pick, and everything like that. So I'm going to go through all of that stuff and more as we delve into all that's going to happen on the field. As always, to follow everything that we do, head to the mothership, thesportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. We just did our first edition of the Sports Inquirer show in a very long time, and that is up and running. So I recommend that you go to the site to check that out. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter and Instagram. Just look us up under Sports Inquirer, all one word. And on Facebook, we have a page on there, The Sports Inquirer. So that's a great way to, everything we post, something new, you can subscribe to those. You'll get updates and pings and all that good stuff. So whenever we post something, you can see when it comes out. We also have our platforms on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcast, Spotify for podcasters, iTunes, all of those. You can head to those platforms, subscribe there as well. And I know myself personally with with the podcast and shows I follow. A great way to keep up is to subscribe because I get notices myself. So I recommend you do that as well. Now, if you want to head to my site every single day or every hour and check it out, that's awesome. That's very beneficial for all parties involved. But I understand how life goes. So just make sure you subscribe to the site. And that is a great, to those platforms, I should say, and the site as well. And that's a great way to check out everything that we do. Now, yes, we're technically recording this on September 8th, and the NFL season started last night with the Thursday night game. Just overall thoughts on that contest. Detroit won at Kansas City. And it doesn't alter what I think is going to happen in those two teams respectively. Like I don't have Kansas City not making the playoffs and not being a Super Bowl contender. I don't have Detroit winning the Super Bowl, even though I do have them winning the division of the NFC North. A little preview there. So I had those predictions before the contest, but I think what you saw is Kansas City without Chris Jones, their elite defensive lineman who is in a contract, I guess a holdout technically, but he's negotiating a new deal with Kansas City. And it was interesting. He was in the stands. He made his presence felt. And he said he was willing to sit out all the way to week 8 because he has to report at some point to get that year compensation or year of service, I should say. So he has his last year of his contract coming up, or this is last year. So he's going to report at some point this season. When we don't know. Travis Kelce, the All-Pro, all-timer at a tight end, him being out for Kansas City as well. Now, granted, I guess he tweaked his knee with a bone bruise on Tuesday, and the game was on Thursday, so that was really a quick turnaround. But anytime you have a player of his age and how much he has played, and there's a knee injury, you're concerned about it. It doesn't seem like he's going to be out for the entire year or anything like that, but I could possibly see him missing a few weeks with the injury. I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on that. But you're very concerned about that, especially the way that he plays. So all that being said, I think Kansas City was still in the contest. The biggest problem is turnovers, and obviously Detroit was able to get a pick six, return that for a touchdown. There was a fumble as well. KC, Detroit turned the ball over too, but I think that Kansas City, you're without Kelce, uh, implementing multiple new offensive linemen, new receivers. Pat Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL right now, and there's some argument with that. And you'll see my MVP pick. I pick another guy to win MVP this year, but I mean, it's only so much one man can do, and the Kansas City will figure it out. They're still going to win the AFC West. I don't trust any of those other teams over a full entire season. But what you saw also is defensively, Detroit was able to run the ball, control the clock, and Goff was able to have a pretty clean pocket for the most part in the contest. So I think defensively is where Kansas City may have some issues. Obviously, you're losing your Pro Bowl and your best Pro Bowler and best defensive player in a Jones, but still, that's going to be a lot for Kansas City to overcome. But I thought, I mean, good effort by Detroit. That was a very big win for them. Remember last year they ended the regular season. First of all, they had a winning record for the first time in about 5-6 years. They were able, actually more than I think it was 2011, I want to say, or 2017. It's one of those years. Was their last winning season. So they're able to get to those 9 wins last year. They were able to and really close the door on Aaron Rodgers' career in Green Bay with that victory at Lambeau. Just missed the playoffs, and now they opened a lot of momentum from last year, and then heading into this year, getting win at Kansas City. That's very big for the franchise that has had a lot of lean times over the years. So that was a very impressive win by Detroit going to Kansas City and getting the victory. But as far as the award predictions, let's just start there. My MVP this year, and you're going to notice a theme with uh, the awards. Well, not all the awards, but Joe Burrow is going to be my MVP for this year. I picked him MVP last year, didn't necessarily work out, but I think this is the year for Burrow and the Bengals. Fourth year under Zach Taylor, fourth year for Burrow. I do have concerns about the offensive line still, but that is a team that is going to produce. They have a good amount of running backs in rotation. Ja'Marr Chase is in the discussion as best wide receiver in the NFL. I just think this is the year. I know he had the cap injury during preseason, and especially with he's had leg issues in the past with injuries. So anytime your lower body is a concern, but it seems like this is the year where they finally break through and make a run. And I think with that will lead to an MVP season. But you have your usual contenders. I mean, Mahomes isn't going to go anywhere. He's going to produce a lot of points, a lot of yardage, and Kansas City's going to win that division. So that's going to be right there. But it also might be a fatigue factor. He's already won 2 MVPs in the regular season. He's 2 Super Bowl MVPs too. And just turned 28, or is about to turn 28. So he's had an amazing start to his career. But I think voters and other people in general are going to try to look other directions. You saw that last year with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. He was second in the MVP voting. Philadelphia is going to have a really good year as well. So he's going to be right there in contention. I think Josh Allen's become kind of the forgotten man in the hierarchy of quarterbacks. I think Mahomes is Mahomes. He's done his thing. Burrow has been to a Super Bowl main appearance, and Jalen Hurts had his breakout year last year. And it just seems like Josh Allen is being ignored, relatively speaking, as far as the hierarchy. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is a factor in that too, going to the same division with the Jets, and obviously Aaron Rodgers, all of his accomplishments and what he brings to the table. Allen's become a forgotten man, I think, in that regard, but he's still a top 5 quarterback and a top 5 MVP candidate, in my opinion. So he's going to be right there in the running. And I'm going to throw Christian McCaffrey in there as well. Want to have a non-quarterback. I really want to have a defensive guy in there. I was really tempted to go that direction as far as MVP. But I think it's going to be a top 5 of all offensive players. Justin Jefferson, right there as well, as far as players go. Lamar Jackson, I think, could be in contention as well for MVP. I don't think Baltimore is going to have as big of a year overall as a team as some others are thinking. But I think individually he's going to put up some good numbers. But and that transitions to the offensive player of the year, which I think will be McCaffrey. I really think a full year in Shanahan's offense, they're going to rely on him a lot. I mean, Brock Purdy had a nice run last year, and I think he was the right choice at starting quarterback for the 49ers. But that is the impetus of that is getting McCaffrey acclimated into the offensive flow. I really think he's going to have his, if you stay, and that's durability has been an issue for McCaffrey. It is for all running backs, really. But I think if he is healthy for an entire season by running back standards, he can definitely have a thousand season because they're going to throw the ball a lot to him. I know they still have Debo Samuel, which will be probably the main throwing target. But with San Francisco, they're going to have a lot of different packages, a lot of diversity on that end of the field. And what that's going to entail is a lot of touches for McCaffrey. So I could definitely see him having a double-digit touchdown season, 1,000+ yards rushing, close to 1,000 yards receiving. He's going to have a lot of touches this year. So 2,000 total yards is not beyond the realm of happening. And they're going to win a lot too. So I think you combine all that together, he's going to be offensive player of the year. And I mentioned a lot of the other guys that'll be in contention, kind of similar to MVP. Justin Jefferson for the Minnesota, Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. And I think I said the Ravens are going to have, they're going to be in a playoff contender. But I think Lamar Jackson is going to have a pretty big offensive year. I think he's healthy. He signed the big contract, so that whole distraction is gone, you would think. So he should play with a clear head and new offensive staff, or at least a coordinator. Maybe open up the offense a little bit more, throwing the ball. That's going to open up the running lanes for him as well. So I think offensively, he's going to produce a very solid year. Maybe not as good as his MVP season because I don't think they're going to win as much. But individually, offensively, he's going to do pretty well. Defensive player of the year, it really comes down, I think, this one's a little bit more direct. I have Nick Bosa being the MVP for San Francisco, just signed the biggest contract for a defensive player in NFL history, $100+ million guaranteed, I think $120+ million for him. But I think he is going to have a very big year for San Francisco. Myles Garrett, 16 sacks last season. Can he make that next step, get the 20? That if he gets to there, that's probably going to seal up the defensive MVP or player of the year for him. But I think with Bosa and Garrett, two edge rushers, those guys are going to have very big years. Micah Parsons from Dallas, I think he's going to have a pretty solid year for Dallas, for the Cowboys. So you got to look at him. TJ Watt, I think injuries hampered him last season, year before he was defensive player of the year. But if he comes back healthy, he is obviously right there among the best defensive players in the NFL. I thought Sauce Gardner in there for the Jets, defensive back, a little bit tough for the DBs to get love as far as defensive player of the year because there aren't as tangible stats for it. But I think he has put himself in all pro contention as the best cornerback in the NFL and his second year in the league. So he's going to have a pretty big year. And the Jets are going to get a lot of attention too. So if the Jets are winning and producing, he's going to be right in the middle of that attention on the defensive end. So that's my prediction for that. Coach of the year, I have Zach Taylor for Cincinnati. I'm just really bullish on the Bengals and what they can do this season. So I have him. I think Dan Campbell for Detroit, and this was before their win yesterday, but I think he's going to get a lot of attention for Coach of the Year for Detroit because I think Detroit's going to win that division and make that next step. And that tends to be the guys who win Coach of the Year. It's like guys like Andy Reid and Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin. I've seen Mike Tomlin love for the Steelers. Those guys, it's weird because if you produce long enough at a consistent level, you're less likely to win Coach of the Year unless you have a record-setting season or things like that. It's weird. Like a Bill Belichick will get more credit for a team that has a lot of injuries and dealing with adversity and finishing 10-7 than if they were 14-3 and had all of their players in healthy and in peak form. It seems like the voting goes for a coach that goes through the most adversity in comparison to just the best overall coach. So I think Taylor's going to be a little bit of a combination of both. I think the Bengals going to have the best record in the AFC, which they've never had before. So that'll be like a little check mark there. Dan Campbell, as I mentioned, with the Bengals, with the Lions. They're going to win that division, and that Lions haven't done that in a very long time. Kyle Shanahan as well with San Francisco. I think they're going to have a pretty big year, and that's going to get a lot of attention. Rookie of the year, really a toss up, I think, between two guys on the offensive end. Bijan Robinson, I think he's going to have a massive year for the Falcons because I think they're going to hand him the ball quite a bit. Arthur Smith loves to run the ball. Desmond Ridder, the new starting quarterback, still a novice, still trying to acclimate himself. So what that means is they're going to run the ball and run it a lot. And I know they got Kyle Pitts on the outside and some other weapons that they're very intrigued by with the Falcons, but they're going to try to run the ball, 30 plus times a game. And I think Robinson, he's a first round pick. They didn't pick him just to sit on the sideline. He's going to get a lot of activity. So I think he's going to be the offensive rookie of the year. I like Jahmir Gibbs as well for Detroit. And you saw it last night, though, where they have Montgomery, the new running back for formerly of the Bears, and now with Detroit. He's going to get a majority of the carries for the Lions. Now, Gibbs is going to have some highlight reel plays, and he's going to have some big moments. But I think Robinson is going to have more touches and produce more stats, and that's going to lead him to winning the offensive rookie of the year. Now, as far as the divisions go, let's break it down. AFC East, look, I know the Jets. I watched Hard Knocks like everyone else. A lot of buzz, a lot of attention, and they really do have a good team. Defensively, they are a borderline Super Bowl contender as far as the defensively, what they can do. And then you look even last year offensively when the bad group of Zach Wilson and Flacco and all other guys, all these guys being in there, they still were able to produce about 6-7 wins last year. You add Aaron Rodgers there. Now, I don't think Rodgers is the same Aaron Rodgers he was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I mean, who is at that position unless you're Tom Brady when you reach your late 30s, early 40s? But I think he's a major upgrade from what they've been doing or had with the Jets before. But saying all of that, I'm still taking the Bills to win the division. And I think just that more continuity. I still like Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. I still think that the Bills are the best team in the AFC East. But if the Jets win that division, it's not a surprise. The Jets are one of my wild card teams, along with the Miami Dolphins. I think I'm banking on Tua being healthy. That's the tricky part. If I could guarantee Tua being healthy, the quarterback being healthy for the entire season, I could see them winning the AFC East. But I just think that I'm just very concerned with the concussions. And we've seen him on the field literally in a prone position after a concussion. That was a very scary moment last year. And him struggling physically with concussions on the field. And they don't get any better as you get older and the more hits you take. So if I'm banking on him having enough health to be good, but I mean, look at that team. They are stacked. I mean, you got Waddle and Tyreek Hill at wide receiver. Defensively, they're solid. That's a really good team for the Dolphins. So they're my other wild card team. I have New England last. Mac Jones just does not inspire me to believe they can compete in that division on a consistent level. And Belichick may be the greatest coach of all time, but if your quarterback's not bringing it, it doesn't help the cause. That as far as the AFC North, Cincinnati is I've been talking so well about them. Obviously, they win the division. Baltimore is another wild card team for me. So I have them in there as far as I'm just making I just realized I had 4 wild card teams. There's only 3. So Baltimore, the Ravens are another wild card team for me. Defense, it's weird with the Ravens. You think so much with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed over the years with the Ravens, hard-nosed football, great defense, but that's not been the case the past few years. They've been an average defense at best, maybe arguably a poorest defense by top NFL standards. But I think it'll be enough to get them enough wins. I think Jackson's going to have a pretty big year. So I think they'll be right there in the a wild card spot, finishing second in the division. Pittsburgh, well, that's another team that's getting a lot of love. I got to see what Kenny Pickett can do at quarterback. I just don't. I don't know. He doesn't have a good track record. I've not seen enough from him to pick them to be a playoff team. But Pittsburgh's going to play hard. I think Tomlin is kind of righted the ship as far as getting some people that were not in his favor in the locker room out of there. So I think they've had that transition. They're going to be a solid team, but I don't know if they're a playoff squad. Cleveland finishes last. And it's a really good division. I mean, Cleveland, I've seen arguments for them being a playoff caliber team. It just depends on Deshaun Watson. Last year, obviously dealing with that suspension for the off the field incidents that he had. And he got started playing midway through last year. Did not look like the same player. But now that he's had a full offseason of training, no incidents or issues as far as what's been going on off the field, we're really going to see truly what this guy can be. And when he was in Houston, he was producing at a top 5 quarterback level for the Texans. So the talent is still there. You just have to wonder if the rust of not playing and being in a new system and everything has worn off. But he could be a sneaky contender for some postseason awards and have the Browns knocking on the door of the postseason. I just don't see it necessarily. The AFC South, only one team's going to be in the playoffs, and that's Jacksonville. Look, Tennessee is, I think, going to regress. I think Derrick Henry is ready for a regression. Ryan Tannehill is kind of stagnant at the quarterback spot. Indianapolis and Houston aren't in rebuild mode completely. Rookie quarterbacks. So that's going to be a lot of ups and downs. I think both of them, I like Stroud a lot for the Texans, but that franchise is just in bottom of the NFL. So they're going to have to, or one of the bottom teams, they're going to have to revamp their entire scheme. Indianapolis, I think Anthony Richardson, I didn't like him coming out of Florida. I'm very concerned for him in that position with that team because I don't like the support system around, especially with Jonathan Taylor, with not having your best offensive player at a running back, which is a quarterback's best friend, especially a rookie quarterback, him not being on the squad and all of the squabbles going on there. I think he's going to have a really, really rough season. I'm not saying he can't turn into a solid player in the future and reach his maximum potential. But as far as this season goes, I think Indianapolis is in for a really, really rough year for the Colts. And as far as Jacksonville, best quarterback in the division, we've seen him with Trevor Lawrence. We've seen him make that step last year, being in the playoffs and having some moments there. I think this is their year to win the division out consistently or pretty easy and roll from there. As far as the West goes, yeah, I think Kansas City is still the best team in the division, despite last night's loss to Detroit. I think the Chargers, on paper, have a lot of talent. Herbert is talent-wise is right up there among the top quarterbacks, but it just seems like there's something not necessarily missing, but that consistency is not there. Losing that game at the Panthers at the Jaguars last year, that left a bad situation for me in my football soul. So I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. Broncos and Raiders, you got new head coaches, new quarterbacks as far as Garoppolo with the Raiders. It may as well be a new quarterback with Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, a new head coach with the Broncos. Too many moving parts, I think, for those teams to be a playoff contenders. And as far as the AFC Championship, I have the Bengals not finally, they beat Kansas City a few years ago to reach the Super Bowl. I think it happens again. I think the Bengals defeat Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, which will be in Cincinnati this year. And they will make it back to the Super Bowl second time within the past few years under Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. NFC, I have the East, Philadelphia winning the division, probably the most complete team, not only in the NFC, but maybe in all of the NFL. When you look at the offensive line, defensive line, the receivers. And Jalen Hurts tremendous year last year, but then we have Devonta Smith, and you have some of the other players, the other targets for Philadelphia. They're going to be the best team in. They may have the top overall, seems similar to last year, best record in the NFC. So look out for them to have a very big year. I have Dallas as a wild card team. I like Dak Prescott. I know he's a very polarizing figure. Every quarterback of the Cowboys is polarizing because so much attention goes to that spot. But I think he's a good quarterback, good enough to lead him to the playoffs. Super Bowl, not so much. Defensively, as I said, we have Micah Parsons on that side of the ball. I think they have enough talent to be a playoff team. Beyond that, I think it's going to be pretty limited. The Giants, I have at third place. I know they made the playoffs last year, and that was a nice moment for them. I just don't know if Daniel Jones is going to be enough to his play. And he had an all-world season from Saquon Barkley. You can't rely on that consistently. We've seen him have injuries in the past. I just don't know. And respect to our North Cobb, Ackworth, Georgia brethren in Darren Waller being a Giant now at tight end. Hopefully Darren has a great year. So I think the Giants have some potential, but I'm just not sure they have enough to be a playoff team again this year. And in Washington Commanders, a similar deal. Too many moving parts. Sam Howell's going to be the starting quarterback. That doesn't inspire much hope for me. So I have them in last in the East. As far as the North, I have Detroit winning the division and being a really solid contender. I mean, you saw last game or last night. I think Goff is a competent division-winning caliber quarterback. I think the running backs are really good. You have some good receivers on the outside. Aiden Hutchinson, he might have his name in the Defensive Player of the Year running this year. His second year in the NFL, already becoming a Pro Bowl potential All-Pro lineman. So I mean, they have a really solid squad in Detroit. So I think they win the division. I think Minnesota's a wild card team. Look, Kirk Cousins, he's kind of similar to Dak Prescott. He's not going to win the Super Bowl for you, but he's not going to have a losing record necessarily. And I think they'll win enough games to find their way into the wild card position. I have the Bears as a wild card team. You got to have some variety with your predictions. So I think the Bears with Justin Fields finds a way to get into the playoffs. I know and I really don't have a good reasoning for it. I can't say they have an elite running back or they have great receivers or their defensive line is outstanding. I'm just picking the Bears just for the fun of it. And I just looked at the other teams that are in wild card contention and they just kind of shook it out. So I think the Bears, I look at them as slightly better than the Giants, slightly better than the Falcons, better than Seattle. I looked at it and I was like, or New Orleans, if you look at the South, the Bears end up being that kind of 7 seed when it all came out. So I have them there. Green Bay, I think there's obviously transition from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, who's been in the program the past few years as a backup. He's now the starting quarterback, no distractions, so that's a good thing for him. Aaron Rodgers is in New York doing his thing. I just think that loss to end the regular season last year is going to be residual into this year, and they're going to have to really revamp that entire team. And Love is going. I have no idea how he's going to play, so I have them last in the division because I just too many inconsistent. I just have no idea what's going to go on there. The South, you can pick New Orleans, you can pick Atlanta. I think those are the two best teams in the division. Right now, I have New Orleans winning the division because I think if you look on paper, the Falcons may have a better overall team, especially on the offensive end. But I think Derek Carr is the better quarterback than Desmond Ritter. So that's why I'm going with the better quarterback. And defensively, the Saints, I think, are better than the Falcons. So that's a toss-up, though. Either one of those teams can win the division. Now, I am banking on. I know Alvin Kamara is going to miss the first few games because of some off-the-field issues, but I'm banking on a healthy season from him, a bounce-back season, whatever form or version that is, for Michael Thomas at wide receiver. Yeah, so I'm banking on that for the Saints to do enough to win a division where 9 wins honestly may get you that division. But the Falcons, if they win the division, that would not be surprise for me as well. I don't see Tampa doing too much. I think the Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, they're gonna probably use both guys at some point this season at quarterback. Neither one inspires much confidence to me. So I look at that and just like, now I know still have Mike Evans there, and they still have some holdovers from the defense that was Super Bowl winners a few years ago. But I just think that with Tom Brady's retirements and leaving that team, it just that deflates the entire franchise, and they're going to have to be in rebuild mode. And in Carolina, obviously, when you have the top overall pick last year and pick Bryce Young, you got a lot of problems with them. Now they're building and trying to get better, but Panthers are not anywhere close to being a team with a winning record or let alone a playoff contender. So they're going to finish last in the South. As far as the West goes, San Francisco's the best team in the division, top to bottom. I know people are making some noise about Seattle, and Geno Smith, respect to him, he had a nice comeback season last year, and I think he can sustain that. But I think overall, the talent and with everything going on with the 49ers, they're the team to beat, and not only the NFC West, but the entire NFC. So San Francisco is my pick there. I have Seattle finishing second. Can they sneak into the wild card spot like they did last year? Possibly. As I said, the only my division winners are pretty standard. Like Philadelphia, Detroit, and San Francisco are my division winners. And then what someone's got to win the South, and I'm picking New Orleans. But beyond that, if you want to argue Dallas, the Giants, Minnesota, Chicago, Atlanta, even the Rams possibly. I think the Rams are going to be regress in a big way. I think Stafford, I gotta see if he lasts the entire season. I'm very concerned about his health and just the overall roster turnover of the Rams. But still, Super Bowl pedigree, maybe they could be in the contender. So once you get beyond teams, when you get from teams 4 to about 10, or like within the NFC, if you pick any of those teams, I'm not going to be mad at you necessarily. But as far as the West goes, I have San Francisco, Seattle, the Rams, and Arizona's going to finish last. Arizona's probably going to have the worst record in the NFL. I don't think Kyler Murray's going to play this year coming off the knee injury. I don't think he wants to play for them because he wants to protect his knee because he's going to be on another team next year. So I think he wants to protect himself physically. And then also, if he plays and doesn't look good, that hurts his value in the future. Arizona, I think, wants to have him as trade capital for the future. So I think they are going to be not as willing to play him this year. So we'll see what happens there. Now, you may have to play at some point because if he is healthy and you have no alternatives, you got to play the guy. But I think but you got a new head coach, a new just regime there. Yeah, I think Arizona's going to have a really long season because they're going to finish last in the West. As far as the NFC Championship game, I have the same matchup from last year, but I don't think Brock Purdy is going to have an elbow injury in like the first series of the contest. And I think San Francisco does make it back to the Super Bowl under Shannahan, and they defeat the Eagles in the championship game. And then this is a fun matchup. I just realized that we've had this matchup 2 times in the past in the Super Bowl, Cincinnati and San Francisco. Both times, Joe Montana uh, broke the soul of the football soul of the Cincinnati Bengals fandom. But I think this time it's going to be reversed. I think the Bengals do find a way to win the championship, win the Super Bowl, bring the first Super Bowl to Cincinnati, and they defeat the 49ers in the championship game. All right, so those are my thoughts. if you disagree with me, and if you want to mock my picks, because these will not happen completely accurately at all. I'm going to have a lot wrong. It's just the way these things go. So if you want to do that, just holler at me on my different platforms. As I mentioned, go to the website, selfthesportsinquirer.net. You can also have the Twitter and Instagram under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. Facebook under the Sports Inquirer. And then finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor. It's not Anchor anymore. Technically, it's Podcasters for Spotify. Real fancy there. iTunes, and really anywhere else that you listen to your digital content, audio or video. Until next time, good fight and good night. Be safe.